Yes, everyone, and welcome to our fourth and final Greek Ancestry case study webinar. As you know, we started this series of four webinars in order to discuss something different compared to what we had done back in May, April, May, June. So if you have missed any of the case study webinars we've done so far, you can find them all on our YouTube channel. They are all on Greek Ancestry. You can also watch them here on Facebook. Okay, so today's webinar will be slightly different to what we've done in the past three webinars. We have many times discussed about the importance of some basic information when starting our Greek genealogy research. We always need to know the family's original surname and place of origin, and only then can we link the immigrant to his or her family in Greece. Only then should we start looking for Greek records. So this is really essential. And today we'll bring some examples of this, and we'll try to reveal aspects of the migration experience. The first case study is in fact the first case I ever worked on when I was 16. So they reached out to me with very little information. We eventually managed to not only find out where the family came from, but also to find living relatives and connect with them. But, at first, to some extent, I fell in the same trap that I'm now trying to save you or some of you guys from. So the trap was I started looking for Greek records without being 100% certain of the place of origin. So here's the info they had at the beginning. In the US, the family went by the name Alec, but they knew that the original Greek name was Alexiou. Okay, it was great that they knew the original surname, but that was not enough. Alexiou is a name that can be found anywhere in Greece, because it does not include like a suffix, for example, which like Akis, Akos, Atos, Poulos, Idis, all those, which are endemic in particular areas and therefore point us there. They had no written evidence, no written reference to the place of origin. They could just tell me what it sounded like, how they recalled hearing it, So they said it sounded like ERQ and Patoki. And according to a 90-year-old relative, these villages were close to each other and were near Sparta. Now, in Sparta, there is only one village with such a name, Yeraki, okay? And I knew there was not an Alexiou family there. And there was no Potoki in the area. So, I started thinking I had to look in a different area. In the Peloponnese, there is only one more village called Yeraki. That's in Ilia. Nothing to do with Sparta. And there is a Potoki there as well. So I thought, okay, we got it. Perhaps this is it. And I started looking into Greek records, but nothing came up for that family. And this is when I realized the importance of records from the immigrant's host country. I found the ship manifest for family members who came to the States and found one more piece of information, the word xirochori. So on the ship manifest, it said, this guy came from Potoki, Xirochori, and from Yerakiou, Xirochori. The mystery was solved. Xirochori used to be a province of Greece in area, and I found a village called Yerakiou, and another village called Potoki in that province, and I found Greek records, mail registers, and eventually we managed to connect the family. But it's interesting to note how many little obstacles we had to overcome, which obstacles could have made the search impossible. So, first of all, the fact that we had to rely on oral information and a sounds like place name was not helpful, right? Secondly, the information about Sparta, it proved to be not just wrong, but also misleading. And if I did not come from Yeraki in Sparta, and I did not know all the families, it's possible I would have spent a lot of time trying to locate the family there, and eventually I would have given up. And giving up would not be the worst. The worst case scenario would be if I had found this or a similar surname in that village in the wrong place. The whole case would be wrong, and even my work would be misleading. You know what I mean? And then the third obstacle is that Potoki, that village in Evia, isn't known by that name today. Instead, it's called Asminio since the 1950s. So, no written reference, a wrong assumption, misinformation, and a name change. Now, talking about name changes of towns and villages, this is a very big issue. We have addressed it before, but I wanted to just give you some more information about it today because I think it's really, really important. I want to have it covered. So here's what happens. Since the very foundation of the Greek state, there have been efforts for the Hellenization of any village or town, province, island, whose name was not 100% Greek. So basically, they were trying to erase any Slavic or Turkish influence by coming up with Greek names. All right. Now, in some cases, they based their renaming on ancient Greek geography. This is, for example, how they came up with many province and municipality names like Madinia, Lakedemona, Gordinia, Messinia. For many villages, they just picked new names, sometimes relevant to the geography of the area. For instance, there are many villages now called Kalithea, which means nice view. And in total, there have been about 4,900 name changes of settlements. Most changes took place in the 20th century, especially the 1920s, and then the 50s, 60s. Between 1926 and 1928 alone, 2,500 names were changed. 2,500 names. In the Peloponnese, I have counted over 900 villages whose names were changed. And in fact, today, I found this amazing database by the Institute of Historical Research of the National Hellenic Research Center. I have the link. I have put it on my website under Education, under Resources. It's the second link from the bottom. So if you go there, it's in Greek, unfortunately, but it's not really hard to find the place you're looking for. It's alphabetical, it is also by area. It's a great tool, I'm telling you. Okay, now let's turn to another case study. We'll take one from Sparta. And this is part of Carol's family, and it is Carol's research, Carol Kostakis Petranik, who is also the moderator of these webinars. She moderates the comments and helps a lot. So we should all thank Carol for her help in general and for sharing all this information I'm going to present today. So the reason why I chose this particular case is because here we have the ideal documentation from the host country, which allows us to turn to Greek records eventually and make the connection and trace the family back. So our immigrant here is James Pappas. And okay, even by the name, we can tell this was a Greek man, whose surname, however, has been altered. Pappas is a Greek surname and means priest. However, this word, Pappas, priest, is also found as the first part, the first component of many, many Greek surnames. For example, Papa Michail, Papa Thomas, Papa Sotiriou, Papa Konstantinou, Papa Christophorou, Papa Alexiou, Papadopoulos, and so on. So when people with these long Greek surnames would come to the States, they would shorten their names to make them more understandable to others, So all these surnames could be shortened into Pappas. All the names I just mentioned could be Pappas. So the immigrant of our case study was called James Pappas, and we know that originally his surname was Papagiannakos. And of course, James could not have been his original Greek name either, as there is no such thing in Greek. Instead, James was mostly used as the English equivalent of Dimitrios, and other examples, Gus for Konstantinos, or Jim for, again, for Dimitris. Anyway, now, if James Pappas is what we only know, and we have no idea about Dimitris or Papagiannakos, okay, how could we find out the original names on our own? All kinds of documentation can help us here. So American census records, naturalization papers, city directories, death certificates. And what could also prove very helpful would be, for example, a marriage certificate issued by a Greek Orthodox Church in the States. So for this person, James Pappas or Dimitrios Papagiannakos, Carroll has found all the relevant documentation. According to his naturalization paper, Dimitrios Papagiannakos, James Pappas, was born in 1875 in Agion Ioannin, Greece. This is an obvious misspelling, right? The correct spelling should be Agios Ioannis, Greece. If you used the wrong spelling to find Greek records, you would get no results. And then, which Agios Ioannis is that? In Greece, there are dozens of villages with this name, so because it means Saint John. Okay, so there are many Saint John villages all around the country. So you need to know which Agios Ioannis you're looking for specifically. So his ship manifest clarifies this by saying that he was from Sparta. And here's why both the naturalization paper and the ship manifest are needed. Look, if we had the naturalization paper only, we would know he came from Agios Ioannis, but not which Agios Ioannis. If we had the ship manifest only, we would know he came from Sparta, but not from which village of Sparta. So it is by having both documents that we know James Pappas, originally Dimitrios Papagiannakos, came from Agios Ioannis, Sparta. We need both. Now with this information, and as both records say he was born in 1875, Carroll was unable to find his mail register record from the GAC in Sparta or the municipality, and then trace the family back to the early 1800s using voter lists, census records we have already talked about in our previous webinars. Now, these records of the host country, right, the ship manifest, the censuses, all of those, they are not interesting only because they help us with research. We have mentioned this many times, but I think it's always worth a repetition. So we need to remember that every record is created for a reason, and there is always a story behind it. An example, Dimitrios Papagiannakos arrived to the US in 1899, okay? But he applied for American citizenship only 1926, 27 years later. Why? Right? Why? So there is a story behind that, and we know it because his son, Nicholas, he wrote a biography of his father. And I'm going to read this because it's interesting. And it's interesting not only for this particular case, but it has broader relevance. So he says, when the Balkan War broke out between Greece and Turkey, the Greek government issued a call to all Greek citizens, including those who emigrated to the US, telling them that if they did not return to Greece to fight the Turks, they would lose their citizenship. Now, you must remember the original intent of the emigrants was to make enough money to go back to Greece and live the life of the rich, which therefore also meant they had not given up their Greek citizenship. My father, along with an estimated 40,000 others, returned to Greece to fight. The tough choice was that at this point he had a family and a business. Fortunately, the war was won quickly, and my father came back. At this point, my father realized that he should become an American citizen, which he did. So this is why it took that man so long to decide to apply for citizenship and why he only did so after the wars. Another story. In the 1920s, James Pappas was listed in the census of 1920, together with his wife and children. But there was also a niece listed as living with them. Her name was Katerina. Now, while men could leave Greece on their own and live in the States just by their own, a young girl did not have that option. Ekaterini came to the US in 1914. We have found her ship manifest record, accompanied by male relatives of hers. And at first, she lived with her uncle Elias Papagiannakos and then with her uncle James. So this is the option a girl had, an unmarried girl had. And talking about women migrating from Greece to the States, first of all, there's a great movie you should all watch. I don't know, perhaps you've already watched it. It's The Brides by Pantelis Voulgaris. He's a Greek director. It's great. It's a great movie. And it talks about women who left Greece to marry someone in the States. So there's a diary of a woman from my village, Yeraki, and her name was Katerina Kostiadou. Well, her brother, who already was in the States, he arranged her wedding with a colleague of his at the candy store. And I would like to read out to you some passages from the diary because they are very interesting and indicative of what happened back then and how people decided and migrated to the States. So I will read some passages. It's not long. So it says, my mother, Georgia, was happy about this in one way. She agreed to send me to America to marry John. But when the time came for me to leave home, my mother cried weeks before I left and said that she didn't want me to leave her. In Greece, note this because it's really important, in Greece, a girl needs a dowry to get married. And with this marriage, I didn't need any dowry. And since my brother Gus said how nice John was, mother agreed to send me to America. My sister Petrula's husband, Nick, was coming to America in a couple of weeks, so my brother Gus in America sent me the money for the trip in a hurry and said that I could come to America with my brother-in-law. It was better for me since I was only 22 years old and wouldn't know my way around, being so shy. The night before I was to leave for America, which was September 1911, all of my relatives came to our house and stayed there all night. My brother-in-law, my uncle, and I, we all went to Yithio by mule, and it took us 3 hours to get there from my home in Yeraki. Yithio is a port city at the south of Laconia, at the south of Sparta. She goes on, I had in my possession a couple of suitcases. We got into a small boat to cross the lake to get to the ship, the Patris, that was the name of the ship, which was to bring us to America. I never got the opportunity to return to visit my dear mother and family again. The ship in those days, 1911, was long and narrow, and the ride was very rough. The boat didn't bother me in the least, as I was out on the deck enjoying the view. Many people were seasick, and the doctor was very busy treating them. When the boat ride was smooth, people danced and had a great time. There was plenty of good food, which I really enjoyed, and so did everyone else. When I was reading this, I was thinking, poor girl. Like, imagine how much they were starving to like the ship food. Anyway, I was very excited about coming to America as I was anxious to see New York, also to see my brother Gus, whom I hadn't seen for 13 years. I also was anxious to meet my future husband, John, whom I had never seen, nor even had a picture of him. But I trusted my brother Gus, who knew him well. After a 15-day trip to America, with no stops in between, we finally got a glimpse of the Statue of Liberty on the horizon. Isn't this great? I mean, I just love reading this. Okay, so this is what I wanted to bring up for today. Now, the floor is yours. You can ask questions. And Carol will be feeding me with your questions and comments. So you can start asking. Just let me repeat that this link to the villages and towns, the settlements which had their names changed, it can be found on Greek Ancestry under Education, under Resources. It's one of the last links on the list, and I really think it's it will be useful and interesting. Tina Vultev's graph. She says that on the manifest, the ship manifest, you must look at the second page. Often will tell you who they left behind with real names, and also who they came to live with. Big clues. You're absolutely right. As Carol pointed out, MyHeritage has in fact combined the two images, so you can view them as one. And what they've also done is that they have indexed the name of those who were left behind in the homeland and those whom the immigrants were going to join. So if you search on MyHeritage for a name, you may also find people waiting for immigrants and not just immigrants. Anything else? Any question? Let me tell you that we are very, very lucky that people like James Pappas's son Nicholas write family histories and record the stories, because yes, records can reveal stories, and we have seen it. We have discussed about it in length. But a concrete family history is always different. And what's even better is when you have both records and family history, and you can confirm both and see how they can prove each other and correlate. In this biography, you read about James Pappas deciding to apply for naturalization, and you also have the naturalization papers themselves. So this is really great. Or another example, that diary of Theodore Kalazoglou, which we have talked about before. It mentioned at some point that I went to that judge, to that court to file my naturalization petition and everything, and I found the naturalization paper, and all the information was confirmed, even the name of the judge. So that's fun. It's interesting. I see some questions here. Stephanie Almadin asks a very, very interesting question. My question is, she says, how much was migration to the south tracked, whether to Egypt or toward Middle East? That's a very good question. So, first of all, we may have statistics, okay, how many people left Greece in a particular year or decade, based on the census. But we do not have, let me put it differently. In the States, there are records of incoming immigrants, right? In Greece, we do not have records of leaving immigrants, of emigrants. We do not have that. So it is not easy to track someone, an immigrant, without having information and records from the host country. And this is very sad. I guess we could have saved and preserved tickets of immigrants, like all those people who boarded the ships to America, like the Patrice, that ship. We could have lists of clients of the ship companies, of people who bought tickets. And I've looked for that and I haven't found anything, at least not yet. But it would be very interesting, both for migration to the States or Australia, and for migration to Africa, to the Middle East, to Europe, wherever. It's really interesting. Lawrence Ravlev asks, on a marriage certificate, is there any reason why a grandfather's name would be used as a middle name for the groom instead of a father's name? I don't think so. I cannot think of a case where that would make sense, Now, in Greece, we do not have middle names. The middle name is the name of the father, but it's not really used, okay? Now, it is possible that the groom had the name of the grandfather. That's possible. And it would also be possible, depending also on the time period, for the groom to have two names. Nikolaos, Ioannis, for two names. And one of those would be the name of the grandfather. But this is all I can think of, I guess. Lauren asks, how do you find family stories? Just passed down by person, or should we look in books? Suggestions? Very, very good question. They are passed down by person, by generation, and this is why it's important to do genealogy research and keep some notes. Side sources, we have talked about this again. I had actually written an article about it on Greek Ancestry, and it is important. Many families have something like a family history book. The thing is, written by some distant uncle and stuff. The thing is how to find it, especially if you're not in Greece. Now, there are many village history books. And I was, in fact, discussing this with a woman from the UK. We had a consultation with today, one of the free consultations we offer. And she was telling me, Greg, why can't I find anything? Sorry, I think there's a disruption in my signal. So she was saying, Greg, why can't we find a history book on Leros? And what I said is, there might be one, but there are two issues here. A, if there is one. B, how to access it, where to find it, all of that. And this is what we try to do with, in Greek Ancestry, and especially with Yaya and me and our intern, Alexandra Kiritsi. We try to bring stories to the fore. We pick stories of broader relevance and we try to communicate them in order to help people contextualize, to help people find the story behind the records, relate to these stories and all of that. These family history books or village history books, most times they can be found locally. For example, I know you're from Sparta, Lauren, so perhaps at the municipal library in Sparta they have a small but considerable collection of local history books. So that's always something helpful. Now, what is also interesting is when you visit the original, the village of origin, the place of origin, to talk to older people, to interview them, in a sense, or literally, see what they know. It's also interesting and very helpful. How do you find the record if my grandfather was in the 1913 war? All right. Interesting question again. Now, you can contact the archives of the army in Greece. I don't know exactly what they have. They should have a list of soldiers. What I know is that if your grandfather or another relative was killed during the war, it would be easier to find information on them because the army has published those catalogs. They're not online, they're not searchable, but they are published in books. So it's not impossible to find something there. Christy asked, what about the travel manifest? Christy, what do you want to know about the travel manifest? Let us know here in the chat and I'll ask the question. Dana, did Greece immigration track those who returned to Greece for the Balkan Wars or otherwise? We are only able to track to New York, but not the other side. Yeah, I'm telling you, in Greece we do not have an immigration archive, at least not one I'm aware of. And this is sad. Now, all these people, since they fought in the war, they should be found in the mail registers of the places they came from in Greece. And as I said, you have nothing to lose to contact the archives of the army. I know they keep some records there as well, but they are not digitized, not searchable, and not easily accessed. They're not public, you know. My mother's story was similar to the one you read, who was marrying her brother's friend. I'm writing her dramatic story. I admire her bravery. Okay, Peggy, you know what? When you're done writing the story, you can send it to us and we can have it published on Greek Ancestry because I'm sure that many people would be interested in reading it. Okay, I see that Tina and Lauren have developed a little chat here. My goodness, and this breakout has been a huge help too. They are talking about family stories and where to find that. Yes, it's also like the Hellenic Genealogy Geek and all the other Greek genealogy Facebook groups like Greek Ancestry and History. They're all very helpful because they are communities of people who share this passion and are very eager to share information and stories. So keep those in mind for sure. Margaret is asking, are there any records for migrants to England? What about migrants within Greece, from Tinos to Athens? No. From Tinos to Athens, what you could find would be like a note in a municipal register which would say that this particular person was born in Tinos but now lives in Athens, or is registered in Athens although was born in Tinos, something like that. If you're interested in municipal registers, we had done a webinar just about those back in May or June, I don't remember. You can find the video on YouTube. Peggy is asking, what do you mean by the second page of the ship manifest? So till now, until MyHeritage combined the two pages into one, there were two pages on all databases, even on the Ellis Island website. There was the first page with the basic information like the name of the passenger and all of that, and a second page with additional information. Now this is not true for all ship manifests. It also depends on the time period. I cannot tell you with certainty exactly which time period had the two pages, now one combined, manifests, but for sure it's one of the later periods, I would say after the 1910s perhaps. I'm not sure, perhaps Carol can clarify this. Betty is asking, what if you don't know the real last name? What Greek documents might reveal it that the people may have brought with them? What Greek documents might reveal it that people may have brought with them? In many cases, Okay, so if you don't know the real last name, you are implying here that the family. Sorry, I think there's a disruption in my signal. Give me a moment. Okay, so I think that you're implying that a family went by one name, but originally they had another name. There are, in many cases, we have records which, like a municipal register or even mail registers and church records, which have both the older family name and the new one. Sometimes a surname, a more standardized surname, and a nickname, for example. So this is a way to find some missing names. Now, if the name change was intentional and abrupt, you may not be able to find it. It's always, records, they do not have guaranteed information all the time. Monica is asking about Greek citizenship. She says, unfortunately, my husband's grandfather on his father's side was from Thessaloniki. The records are very difficult to find. He came to the United States around 1921. The problem with getting the citizenship is that the spelling of our last name varies. Some of the documents say the name is Palesti, and we have always used the name Palestis. For that reason, we cannot show the direct lineage to his grandfather. Do you have any suggestions? I don't. I see exactly what you're saying, and I've heard of this happening with others. A good Greek lawyer is my suggestion. I don't have any other a suggestion. Perhaps if he was married in the States, perhaps there is a marriage certificate for this person issued by the Greek Orthodox Church, which would have the name spelled correctly. Because the first spelling, Palesti with a Y, it doesn't make sense in Greek. So it's an Americanized spelling. So see if there's a church, a Greek Orthodox Church, where this grandfather had been married. How do we find my great-grandfather records when he was born in Turkey? You should watch our Asia Minor. So we had done an Asia Minor webinar back in the summer. We did an Asia Minor webinar 3 weeks ago. It was the first webinar of this series. So, and we have also, there's also an article on Greek Ancestry under Education about Asia Minor ancestry. I suggest you take a look at there, because you will find a detailed answer. This is what I'm saying. Is there a way, Lindsay is asking, is there a way to find records of people living relatives in Greece? Where would you look? The Greek telephone directories is the answer. Well, the question here is how, like, if you can follow the lineage and are certain about the connection, yeah, the telephone directory will definitely help. But if you are just looking for people with this surname, you might knock on random people's doors, and you don't want that. Peggy is saying something about Find a Grave, the website with graves in the States. We don't have, unfortunately, there's not such a website for Greek research. Mark is asking national service records on individuals from the 1950s. Yeah, just contact the archives of the Army. I can. Those of you who are interested in this, just send me a message after the webinar. I'll give you their contact information. Christy is asking, the shipping companies, shouldn't they have kept records of the passenger manifests? This is what I was talking about before. I haven't seen such records, and it would be very, very interesting to have them. So yeah, and I'll say this again. So I don't know of such records, and it would be great to have them, but I don't know any, and it is a pity. Yvonne is asking, I know name spelling is crucial. Yes, there are many variables, although a native Greek speaker can definitely help you with the most standard, most common spellings, because they are pretty standardized. Thalia is asking, how do I find the correct spelling of my father's last name? Not any of surviving relatives to ask. Don't worry. On Greek Ancestry, we offer this for free. Go to our website under, I'm forgetting the tabs, tools and name spelling. Anyway, there is a form. Carol, can you just give a link to that? There is a form you can fill out for free on our website, asking us about the correct spelling of your family name, and we will get back to you with the original Greek version and the proper transliteration. And we do this for free, so just go ahead. In fact, let me just find this right now for you. I'll give you the link. And guys, again, go on the website and check out that link with the name changes. It's helpful, I'm telling you. Okay, so the name spelling form you can fill out. It can be found under Education Tools on our website, and I'll now share the link in the chat. Or I'll try to. Okay. All right, great. All right, guys, if there are no other questions, perhaps it's time to wrap this up. Now, this is the last of this series of webinars. We might do more in the future. I have been invited to give some presentations on the My Greek Roots Facebook group, starting most likely not next but the following Saturday. I think that will be interesting. It's going to be a more general discussion, a broader topics discussed about Greek genealogy, but they might also be helpful, and I may be able to upload those on YouTube as well. Be sure to follow us here on Facebook, on Instagram. We have an Instagram account, and Yaya and me also has an Instagram account. Also on YouTube, so that you can get notifications every time we publish a new video or a new article, because you might be missing something. So once again, thank you. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ for your attendance and interest and support. We should all thank Carol for helping us out with these webinars and moderating the comments. Γεια σας. Have a good one. And we'll see each other soon again, I guess. Bye.